Hello and welcome to this challenge tutorial. In these challenge tutorials I teach you a basic art concept and then I challenge you to create an artwork using this new knowledge that you've just learned. So in this tutorial we're talking about pointillism. So pointillism is quite an interesting concept. Let me show you how it works. So pointillism has a history that goes quite far back. Way back to 1550, when they were inventing printing presses, and they needed a way to do pictures. But the printing presses were like etched plates, so you couldn't do gradients and so on. So the Italians came up with a system called stippling, where essentially you're using dots to create a shading. So the darker you want something to be, the more dots you're going to add. The lighter you want something to be, the less dots you add. Like that. From there, artists decided they're also going to do something similar. And that's where Impressionism comes from. So with Impressionism, instead of mixing your colors on the palette, you would paint individual colors directly onto the canvas without mixing them in little dabs and dashes. And there were many famous impressionists like Claude Monet, Edgar Degas, and so on. And out of that impressionism, we got pointillism. So what pointillism did was, it said you can't take any old rab and dab dash on your canvas. You've got to make dots. And originally the idea was that these dots would be simply your three primary colors. The idea being that if you put a yellow dot, so I'm putting a really large yellow dot there down just to illustrate the principle. Next to a blue dot, when you stand back, they would optically mix and your eye would see them as one green dot. Or if you took a yellow dot and put it next to a red dot, you would get what appeared to be an orange area. And the same with the red and the blue, they would appear to give you a purple area. So needless to say, when you painted, you didn't use big dots like that, you used really tiny dots. Like this. And then of course, you never fully covered the canvas. So you had a bit of the white of the canvas always shining through. And the thinking behind that was that the white of the canvas would make the whole painting appear brighter. And the same with not mixing the colors. They found that when you mix colors together, it loses a little bit of its vibrancy. So to try and retain that vibrancy, you would place the colors next to each other to get an optical mixing. So that was the difference between pointillism and impressionism. With impressionism, you could use any brush stroke, long ones, short ones, dots, dabs, rabs and dashes. But with pointillism you had to use little dots. So traditionally pointillism was done in oil paint because it gave a dot that didn't spread on the canvas like, for example, a watercolor dot would. Today, however, I'm using acrylics because it works just as well. And as you can see, your dots don't spread. So what I do is this. You take some paint and you add a decent amount of water to it. And then you mix them together to get a nice thin paint. If you're using oil paint, then you just add medium to the paint instead of water. So what I'm using here to mix my paints in is just a watercolor palette. So I do find when you do mix like this, the paint does also tend to get air bubbles in it. So I like to leave my paints just for a few minutes to settle and let those air bubbles just come up. Another thing you can do is just tap the palette on the table like that, and that also helps to get rid of the air bubbles. So let's do a practical example of how you would mix colors using pointillism. So traditionally you would only use red, yellow and blue. The other alternative is to use one of the other color mixing formulas like cyan, magenta and yellow, which is what the print industry eventually settled on. So what you could use is a rigger brush like this. What I like about this is because it's got a nice long length of hair, it can hold quite a bit of paint and you can make many dots before you have to refill it. Whereas if you're using a shorter one like this guy over here, you'd have to pick up paint every 2 to 3 dots. What a lot of other people do is they actually use the back of the brush. So you dip it in the paint and then you dip it on your canvas. With that you'll find you're lucky if you get 2 dots. So that's quite a time consuming process. So what I do to save time is I've got plastic droppers like this. Because the paint is nice and thin, so you can just suck up the paint into the tube of the dropper like that. And as you press here at the back, you're getting nice even dots all the way through, and you can work for ages like this. So needless to say, the bigger the opening over here, the bigger dot you're going to have. So you'd need to use different droppers for different size dots. So that's what I'm going to do today. I just squeeze it and then I just suck up some of that paint into the dropper like that, and then I just wipe off the tip so that he stays nice and clean before I start painting. So to save myself having to wash the dropper in between each color, I have several droppers. These droppers are dirt cheap. They cost literally cents each, so I buy them in a box of 100 at a time, and it costs me a few dollars. So now I've got 3 different droppers that I can use at any time, so it's not a problem changing colors whatsoever, and that saves me a lot of time as I paint. So we'll start off with the yellow, and let's do a yellow and red mix. So I'll just do a basic block. So we start at this top left hand corner over here, and we have this completely yellow, and then we want it to go to orange and then to red in the bottom right hand corner. So what I'll do is here where I wanted lots of red, here in the top left hand corner where I wanted yellow, I'm going to add lots of dots of yellow so that eventually there's no paper shining through anymore. Can you see that? As I come here to this center area, let's maybe just do a few little dots over there so we can picture our block. So here in this central area over here where we want it to be orange, we're going to use gradually less and less yellow dots. Gradually, so that there's just a little bit of the paper shining through. Here's more of the paper shining through. And here's even less and less until here right on the other side where it's supposed to be red, there's nothing. Like that. So essentially we form now a shading of with the yellow going from yellow through to white in that case. But now obviously we want to do a shading with red. So I'm going to pick up my red paint. And I'm going to start in the opposite corner. So over here I'm going to add lots and lots of red dots so that you can't even see any yellow. So the idea with these dots in pointillism is that they don't actually touch each other. You're laying these dots next to each other. So I'm aiming for those white areas left open by the yellow. So in an ideal world, that's how it would work. In the practical world, it doesn't always work like that. If you don't want these colors to mix with each other or anything like that, then what you need to do is dry the yellow before you do the red. So now can you see I'm going lots of red over here, gradually less and less and less towards that top left hand corner, which we need it to be neat yellow. So now we've got yellow, an orange looking area through to red. So to get that full effect where you get that optical mixing, you need to stand back like that. So can you see how your eye tends to fuse the yellow and the red dots together to give you an orange? And that's pointillism right there. That's how it works. So just to show you, I have now done the same exercise using yellow and blue and red to give you a purple and a green. Can you see that? So like I say, in an ideal world, these dots never actually touch each other. They sit next to each other. But in a practical world, you don't always have time to paint and dry the one layer of dots off before you do the next. So you'll often find that when you're making dots, it is actually mixing on the canvas. Let me show you that. Can you see over here where the yellow and the blue mixed into each other a bit? So you do still have yellow dots, you do still have blue dots, but now you've got some free green dots as well. And that just really enhances the effect. So originally, like I said, it was only yellow, red and blue with your three primary colors were allowed to be used. But the guys soon found, because you get this mixing effect, and because you'd have to make really, really minuscule dots to get good greens, oranges and purples, in other words your secondary colors, that they soon started doing this. They would use a palette with your three primaries and your three secondary colors, like that. And later they would add spot colors as well. And that's what I'm going to do today for my painting demonstration. I found this seascape on Pixabay and he looked quite pretty and he had nice basic colors in him. So I figured we'd give him a bash. So clearly the majority color in this painting is blue. Can you see we've got blue in the sky, blue in the water, and obviously blue in the green. So I'll start off with the blue. So the blue I'm using for my basic here in this painting is cerulean blue. So we've got a nice straight horizon over there. So I'm just going to put this down and just do a basic little line over there using a pencil, just so that I know where the horizon is. So what I like to do with a horizon like that is I measure him. That's the way I know he's going to be perfectly horizontal. That, and then around here, this vicinity, we've got that lighthouse. So I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. Then we've got that little piece coming out around there, and that around there. So I'm not trying to get this guy looking perfect or anything like that. That's all just an exercise. That's more than enough to get us going. So I'm now just going to soften up all these lines here, so that they don't shine through too much in the final painting. So I've used a regular graphite pencil, so I'm using a kneaded eraser and just rolling it over there. That's lightening up and softening that line for me. Yeah, there we go. Just light enough for me to make out where it is. That's good enough. Great, so I'm going to start off with essentially a solid blue line. Running all the way across there. Obviously not by the lighthouse itself. And I'll stick with this blue all the way out. So we may as well, seeing as we've started with the sea, we may as well do the sea. So we know the sea is dark over here. And then it gets lighter as we come lower down. So I'll just use the white of the canvas to make that appear lighter. Do the same on the other side. I often find it works quite nice just to do almost little blocky areas at a time. It sort of gives that blocky area a time to dry while you're busy with the next area when you're working in acrylics. So because I'm using the dropper, I am having to add a constant pressure on that little ball at the back, so that the paint comes out at a nice constant rate, and that's what's allowing me to make lots and lots and lots of dots until the whole dropper is empty before I have to fill up again. You do have to be patient when working with pointillism. It is a time-consuming process. So what you ideally want to do is sort of just zone out. Because you know what to do. It's just a matter of doing it. And then every now and again, you have to sort of stop and think, what do I need to do next? So in those in-between bits where you don't have to think, then you can think about all sorts of other things. Maybe your next painting project. Alright, so this now comes out around there. So I'm just adding myself some indication of that edge and this edge over here. Like that. Now I know where to fill up to. Okay, so I can also see it's darker here and it gradually goes lighter this way and that way. So we'll have to compensate for that. And it is all blue, so we do need to add lots and lots of blue dots. So the way we compensate for that is we'll bring some of that sky color reflecting into the water. That'll make this water here appear lighter and lighter in that area there. So we'll add more of the sky color here and less of it as we go that way. That's at this stage I'm just giving it a basic little covering, and you can see when I'm not pressing on my this little back piece over here, when I'm not applying enough pressure, then there's no paint coming out, and then I'm not getting a solid dot. So I'm also holding my dropper at a bit of an angle just so that you can see better. You would work with yours perfectly upright. So out of habit, I do tend to work perfectly upright, so if I do that every now and again, you can't see the dropper. You'll forgive me. And if you're not using droppers, you're using a paintbrush, because it's quite time consuming like this, feel free to take breaks. Right, so I've got a basic shading sort of there now. It's not looking too bad, eh? But I think let's continue working on that. We've got less and less gaps, and we'll keep that. We can add more, but we can make sure that we're keeping this here lighter. Than this side over here. So take your time and work in that correct amount of dots. If you're unsure, stand back every now and again. Also now just making sure that the right hand side looks continuous. There's not suddenly a difference in tonal value and stuff according to the left and the right hand side. Okay, so can you see now how pointillism evolved from stippling and impressionism? Because essentially I am stippling here now. But pointillism is now an extra step beyond stippling, because now you're using multiple colors. Okay, so I think we've got a gradient now going from top to bottom and from there through to there. Can you see that? So that's great. While we're with the blue, let's take that and start tackling the sky. We've got lots of blue in this area, so it's sort of a bluey, orangey, purpley sky. So also quite a bit of gradient happening over there, eh? Lots of blue in this vicinity. fading out, going in this direction. And now this initial amount of dots that I'm adding here is just a guesstimate, because I don't fully know if it's going to be enough. So as we add the other colors, we may find that you need to add some more. Because obviously we don't have the other colors to judge whether we have enough blue dots yet. All we've got at this stage is the white of the canvas. So there is blue in these vicinities. Yes, I'm going to add just a basic little layer of blue dots, so that when you do stand back, there is blue here. So in a sense, you can see this initial blue that we're adding here as like a black and white version, or a blue grayscale version of our painting. Okay, this comes down further over here, so that by the time we add the other colors, these blues are just enough. Yeah, I'm going to make this quite solid. It is solid blue in this area here. And gradually less as we come down here. So it's again a bit of a shading happening over here. Okay, I think let's leave that at that for the blue. Then we'll continue with the sky, and we'll work our way down. So in that sky, we've got some yellows happening there. It's not quite, it's more of an orangey yellow. So I have now cheated a little bit, and I've put out some yellow ochre to help me get that orangey yellow, because cadmium yellow is going to be just too bright. So even though we will be using cadmium yellow, just to initially or instantly have that toned down, I'm using some yellow ochre in here. In other words, there's still going to be lots of optical mixing happening. Multiple colors next to each other. So as we did with the little test exercises, try not to put these dots on top of the blue dots. You want them to sit next to each other, so that you're gradually filling up the white of the paper. And the paints aren't really mixing with each other. So this direction, the sky is not so yellow anymore. It's a little bit more purple. So here we're going to have to add some reds and some purples as well. There is still some yellows floating around in this area, so I am still adding some of it. Like that. Okay, so here we've got a bit of a shading happening. So I've got lots of yellow and then less and less as I go up into that blue to start getting a shading happening over there. See that? Okay, and we do have some reflections happening. Remember, this area here needs to go lighter. So I'm going to start reflecting some of these watercolors in this area over here. More in the bottom left hand side and less as we move towards the right, top right. Great. Hey, it's actually starting to look like a little bit of something, eh? Okay, so next color. So the next color I'm going to use is some purple in that area over there. This purple is a little dark. But hopefully we'll be able to bring him back with some brighter red dots as well. There's quite a bit of purple in this vicinity here too. And I'm seeing some purple all the way along here. Going right out the picture. Coming down here until around this vicinity here, then that purple tends to fade away and disappear. Okay, there's that. Now let's take some red. And that should now make this area look a little bit more maroon. Okay, let's leave that at that for now. Let's go to some yellow. So the majority yellow is in this vicinity here. So I'll start there. Runs all the way along here. And then from here it starts disappearing on us. There seems to be a bit of yellow in that vicinity around there too. So why not? We'll add some yellow dots in over there. Okay, so our sunset is starting to look like a sunset now already. So this here is sort of also a bit of a shading to get that rounding. So I'm going to use some purple along here. And then less and less dots as I move across. As that up goes along there like that. And then there is a light on there. So I'm going to put a big dot of yellow down. He's now really quite thick, so I'm going to have to just cheat a little bit over there just to paint that little shape over there. Alrighty, so there's our lighthouse. This area is really dark as well, so it's rocks and stuff. So I'll stick with the purple, why not? It's really dark. And over there is actually a bridge. So let's do that. And that. And now obviously we can see some water through that little bridge over there. So I'll put down some water dots over there, like that. And then on top of that, and then on top of those rocks, we've got some greenery growing there. So that purple is now also again very thick, so I'm going to just put down a few little dots on top of it like that. That should do the trick. And here's some more over here. Okay, so all this area here is green. So I'm going to pick up a ton of green, and we can start doing that area there as well. Well, we've got the green. So this is quite a solid green area, so I'm going to be very generous with the dots. Get them quite close to each other. So I think we will add some yellows in between here for some highlights, and some purples for some shadows. So as I go along here gradually, I'm also just checking the guys that I've done before to see whether I've got enough. Maybe I have, maybe I don't. I'm not sure. We'll soon see. If we don't, we just come back and revisit it. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill up this last little area over here. Alright, so now that I've got the majority of this, just a layer of color, now I'm going to take areas and really make them solid green. If I look on the photo, it does seem to be almost like little patterns. So I'm going to replicate that effect here in mine. And that gives just some impression of details. Like this area here is higher than those areas. And what these little patches is going to do is going to give us a clue as to what to do with the rest. Where to put the other colors. Where to put the highlights, where to put the shadows, and so on. And if you're busy with a large painting, obviously this is just a really small painting, but if you're busy with a large painting, then this will give you a lot of detail. Right, I think let's leave it at that for now and start adding a few shadows and things in. So again, I'm going to still follow roughly the picture to give me a feel for where to put these guys in. For example, I can see in this area here, there's some darks. So I'm aiming for those light values now. All the bits of paper that are still visible. And I'm dotting them up. Because this is quite a dark area. We haven't got a ton of sunlight here. So we wouldn't want much of the paper shining through here. And yeah, even in between these solid green patches that we made, you're still going to have dots of the purple as well. Just little specks of shadow. Alrighty, yeah, it's starting to look like something there, eh? Okay, so let's leave that at that there for now, and let's add a few little highlights here and there using the yellow. Those yellow dots, think of where it's going to be high. The little bushes and things that are peeping their heads out, they're going to have highlights. Yeah, I think let's leave it at that. Let's not overdo the yellow there. I think I'm also going to just add some yellow inside the just something to contrast against. So we've got that over there. And a bit of a purple reflecting over there. And then we've also got some yellow that is now reflecting here inside the sky, reflecting inside the water. And we've got some red reflecting in the water. So I'm taking my cue from what's up top there. Take some of it up into that blue there. So it's not just blue and white, it must be shadings of all these different colors. Just a touch in there. Not too much because there isn't really red on that side. But there's definitely yellow. There's definitely yellow. Alright, and I think I'm going to use my artist license, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue in here to darken up this water a little bit more, so that you've got a highlight sort of running along the water in that vicinity over there. So this here is not so bright. That little edge over there. Okay, and we do have some purples in the water too. So some of that is like right here on the horizon. And then there's some more in this vicinity around here. Yeah, that should be good enough. Yeah, I just want to tone some of those. That purple there seems to be just a little bit too much, so I'm just toning it down with a bit more blue over it or next to it. This area must still look blue. It mustn't look purple. Alrighty, I think we'll call it a day on that. So let's stand back and see what he looks like. Yeah, there you go. There's a pretty little pointillism seascape for you. So now let's take a look and see what does he look like from close up. Alrighty, so from close up, all you've got is one big, looks like a mess of dots. But when you stand back, you've got a beautiful picture. So I hope you enjoyed that pointillism demonstration. I thought it was quite fun. I enjoyed doing that. So your challenge is choose a good landscape and you also do your own pointillism landscape scene. Post it for me so that I can see what it looks like. Good luck. I'll see you next time.